Though slow to quarrel and for sport killing nothing that lived, they were doughty at bay and at need could still handle arms. They shot well with the bow, for they were keen-eyed and sure at the mark, not only with bows and arrows. Standing out from the many proud warrior cultures of Middle-earth, the Hobbits are a famously languid, peace-loving people. However, this does not make them a toothless people. Though one might never think it, hidden behind the peaceful English country-styled Shire lies a force to be reckoned with. Though Arthedain protected the Shire and later the Rangers of the North, when dark forces managed to enter her borders, the Hobbitry in arms always stood ready to defend their homes. Welcome to our latest video on the armies of Middle-earth, where we will embark upon our most unconventional topic, the militia of the Shire Hobbits. And if you ever wanted to come pretty close to meeting some hobbits in real life, check out our sponsor for this video, Fan Fusion Phoenix, the indie pop culture convention that's gathering real fans in Phoenix, Arizona, June 6th to 8th, 2025. We don't just mean meeting Hobbit cosplayers either, because Elijah Wood will be leading all 4 of the Lord of the Rings Hobbits as special guests. They'll be joined by Simon Pegg from Shaun of the Dead, Katie Seagal from Futurama, Charlie Cox from Daredevil, and the list goes on. It's also going to be overflowing with gaming, with live arcade cabinets to play, the game Tabletopia, an arena of tabletop action, as well as board games, card games, and D&D. It's not only family-friendly with loads of games, art, and activities, but kids under 12 get in for free. And backed by popular demand, Fan Fusion Phoenix will feature a wrestling extravaganza of heroes and villains battling it out. You probably also noticed the cosplay. Yep, there'll be cosplay, suffice to say, bring your own too. You can get all the details and see all the scheduled action by heading to phoenixfanfusion.com, link in the description. At the beginning of the Third Age, there existed 3 groups of hobbits, residing by the Northmen in the valley of the Anduin River. The Harfoots lived in the lower foothills of the Misty Mountains, the Stores in the southern vales of the Anduin, and the Falahides under the southern eaves of Greenwood. The Harfoots were the shortest and smallest of the 3. They were distinguishable by their darker skin, lack of facial hair, and neat and nimble hands and feet. They liked to dwell in smeals within highlands and hillsides, accustomed to settling long in one place. They were friendliest to dwarves, whom they ran into on the High Pass and Great Road. The Stores were the heaviest and broadest of the 3, with larger hands and feet. Unlike the Harfoots, they grew facial hair. They feared water, preferring flat lands, and were friendliest to the race of men. The Falahides were the tallest and slimmest of the 3 Hobbit clans, with some growing to be 4 feet tall in height. Their skin and hair tended to be fair, and they had no facial hair. Unlike their pastoral cousins, they preferred to hunt, and as a result were bolder and more inquisitive than their Hobbit cousins. They were friendliest to the elves, with whom they shared a love of song, speech, and trees. We are told in the works of Tolkien that at no time had hobbits of any kind been warlike, and they had never fought among themselves. In the olden days, they had of course been often obliged to fight and maintain themselves in a hard world, but in Bilbo's time, that was very ancient history. Tolkien had a habit of giving each race and their subdivisions a specialization of weaponry. Among the elven clans of the First Age, the Vanya preferred spears, the Noldor swords and shields, the Teleri bows, and their subgroup the Nandor preferred axes. Likewise, the houses of men emulated the elves they resided next to. The houses Beor and Hador were armed and trained by Noldorin elves, preferring sword and shield. House Haleth, in contrast, resided near the Sindar and adopted their forest guerrilla warfare tactics, with a preference for ambushing with bows and axes. Dwarves throughout the ages favoured the axe as their primary weapon, but also used swords, knives, shields, bows, and mattocks. As for hobbits, it is reasonable to believe they adopted the weaponry and tactics used by those with whom they were friendliest. The Harfoots would have adopted axes like the dwarves, Stores a variety of weaponry commonly used by the race of men, and the Falahides would primarily have favoured the bow, the predominant weapon of elves. Yet these 3 types of hobbits would eventually migrate and merge, incorporating their traits. The hobbits became uneasy as a growing number of Easterlings passed around the Greenwood and began harassing the Northmen, while a shadow was rising in Dol Guldur. The Harfoots were first to begin migrating westwards into Eriador, beginning what the hobbits referred to as the Wandering Days. They tended to settle down for long periods of time, and eventually came to a land between Brandywine and the Weather Hills. They founded many settlements, and by the 14th century of the Third Age, they reached Bree. They were soon joined by the Falahides, who crossed the mountains north of Rivendell, travelling slowly down the Horwell into Eriador, before joining their cousins near Weathertop and finally arriving at Bree. The Stores were the last to depart, roughly a century after the Falahides, advancing along the Redhorn Pass through the Loudwater into Eriador. They settled for a long time between Tharbad and Dunland, mingling with the Dunlendings. Because of the rise of Angmar, they only began migrating north in TA 1630 to join their cousins. In TA 1601, King Argaleb II permitted the Hobbits of Bree to settle in his royal hunting grounds of Arthedain. In return, they swore allegiance to the kings of Arthedain. Their vassalage was a light one, for they were required only to acknowledge their lordship, speed their king's messengers, and keep the bridges and roads in repair. Thus, two Falahide brothers, Marcho and Blanco, led a mostly Harfoot group to cross the Bridge of Stonebows over the River Boranduin to found the Shire. The Shire measured 120 miles from the Far Downs to the Brandywine Bridge, and measured 150 miles from the marshes in the south to the northern moors. Prior to the Hobbits' migration, Arthedain had been very fertile and well-tilled, comprising many royal farms, vineyards, cornlands and woodlands. The Shire was subdivided into the north, east, south and west. North Farthing was the least populated area, with a cooler climate and rocky soil. The Shire's barley was cultivated here, and used predominantly for beer. This subdivision comprised Long Cleave, the home of the North Took clan, and the village of Hardbottle. West Farthing was the most populated, holding the Shire's capital of Michael Delving, and serving as the centre of authority. The subdivision comprised the towns of Bywater, Hobbiton, Needlehole, Nobottle, Overhill, Tookbank, Tuckborough, Waymeet, Little Delving, Whitwell and Greenholm. South Farthing was the warmest subdivision and very fertile. Here the cultivation of pipeweed was found, alongside the old vineyards, which produced a strong red wine. It comprised the towns of Longbottom, Pincup and Gamwich. East Farthing contains the forest of Woody End, the green and stony hills, and the rivers of Stockbrook, Thistlebrook and the Water. It comprised Brockenbores, Budgeford, Deep Hallow, Dwarling, Frogmorton, Rushy, Scary, Stock, Whitfurrows, Willowbottom and Woodhall. Technically not part of the Shire, and something of a quasi-colony, was the territory of Buckland. In TA 2340, Gorhendad Oldbuck crossed the Brandywine from East Farthing to start a settlement in Buckland, beginning with the Brandy Hall in Buck Hill. As Gorhendad's family grew, so did the hall, and it became a flourishing community, ruled by the Brandybucks. Gorhendad became the first Master of Buckland, a hereditary title amongst the Bucklander Hobbits. It was only a position of nominal authority, but in the Fourth Age, after the War of the Ring, King Aragorn Ellisar made the Master of Buckland one of the Mayor Councillors of the Reunited Kingdom. In FA 31, Aragorn also gave the Westmarch to the Shire Hobbits as a gift. This extended the Shire's western boundary to the Tower Hills. The Shire did not have a standing army per se, but it did have something akin to a militia, a police force, and a border patrol. In terms of a civilian government, the Mayor of Michael Delving was elected leader of the Shire, chosen every 7 years at Lythe during the Free Fair on the White Downs. The Mayor of Michael Delving managed banquets, the postmaster, and the first sheriff. The first sheriff was the head of the Watch, a police-like body of hobbits, responsible for protecting the Shire from various beasts, maintaining the peace, and enforcing the rules. The rules were the obligations to the Arthedain, which would outlive the kingdom's fall. The first sheriff oversaw 12 sheriffs, with 3 sheriffs in each farthing. Sheriffs wore feather caps to distinguish themselves from civilians, and their number depended on the needs of the time. When Sharkey overthrew the Shire by propping up Lotho Sackville Baggins, he increased the number of sheriffs to suppress revolts and arrest anyone who might break the rules. Sharkey also created the Chief Sheriff title for Lotho and established the first East Farthing troop. Among the sheriffs was a special constabulary force known as the Bounders. They were a deputized Shire border patrol, and their number, like the sheriffs, depended on the needs of the time. They watched the borders for strange peoples or creatures that might intrude and cause harm. As for the military of the Shire, this was overseen by the Thane. In TA 1975, both Arthedain and Angmar were destroyed. King Aranarth decided not to restore the kingdom, and instead took the title of Chieftain of the Dunedain, ruling over the Ranges of the North. This left the Shire Hobbits leaderless. To remedy this, they chose a new leader amongst themselves, Booker of the Marish, who became the first Thane, meaning chief. Thaneship henceforth was a military office strictly passed through the male line. In times of emergency, the Thane was the master of the Shire Moot and captain of the Shire Muster and Hobbitry in Arms. It was the job of the Thane to gather a Shire Moot, where it was decided if a Shire muster would raise the Hobbitry in Arms, the militia of the Shire. We are unsure how the mustering was done, but one can assume each village, town or folkland within the Shire must have been responsible for raising a company-sized force of hobbits who would attend the Shire muster. The idea of summoning hundreds of hobbits for training camps or field maneuvers would seem to be a bit absurd, yet one can imagine various hobbit families would have maintained some traditions for the Shire muster. We know next to nothing about how the Hobbitry in Arms fought tactically. We are told hobbits in general are slow to quarrel, not very warlike, and never fight amongst themselves, but at a need could still handle arms. They were skilled with all kinds of tools, and were adept with weaponry when they had to be. They were keen-eyed and used the bow well, and also skilled at throwing and slinging stones. We know hobbits once used swords, axes and shields. When Gandalf was looking for a burglar, he mentioned, "Swords in these parts are mostly blunt, and axes are used for trees, and shields as cradles or dish covers." During the end of the Angmar War in TA 1975, the Shire dispatched a company of archers to help defend Fornost, none of whom returned. After this, Círdan and Eärnur led an army eastwards from Mithlond and Lindon to attack Angmar, with more Shire hobbits accompanying them. After the dissolution of Arthedain, the Rangers of the North secretly protected the Shire. This was done unbeknownst to the Shire hobbits, who flourished under the watchful eye of their unseen protectors. However, during the reign of Erastil, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains became bold and invaded Eriador. The Rangers of the North fought many battles against them, but one band of Orcs, led by the Orc chieftain Glorfindel, managed to bypass them, entering North Farthing in TA 2747. At Long Cleave, Bandabras Took, the second son of Thane Isumbras III, was alerted to the Orc invasion. He led a force of hobbits over the River Norburn to engage them. Bandabras was a very tall hobbit, standing 4 feet 5 and able to ride a horse. He charged his horse at Glorfindel, wielding a wooden club and taking the head off the orc. Legend has it that the head flew 100 yards straight into a rabbit hole, and thus the game of golf was invented. The rest of the orcs fled, ending the Battle of the Greenfields. The Shire would not see another real battle until the end of the Third Age, but there were quarrels with fell beasts to contend with in the meantime. In TA 2911, during the rule of Argonwy, a fell winter caused the Brandywine to freeze over. This allowed white wolves to invade Buckland. The hobbits of Buckland responded by using the emergency signal, the Horn Cry of Buckland, mustering hobbits to defend themselves. The Horn Cry of Buckland would be used twice more, once by Fredegar Bolga in TA 3018 when the Black Riders intruded, and once by Merry in TA 3019. When the Dunedain left the north to join Aragorn at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, they left the Shire open to attack. Saruman exploited this by donning the name Sharky and employed ruffians to infiltrate the Shire. They managed to take over the Shire by propping up Lotho Sackville Baggins as the chief sheriff in TA 3018. Their power secured, Sharky's lackeys turned the Shire into a totalitarian regime, before Sharky overthrew Lotho and took control of the land himself. The only ones to defend themselves were the Tooks of Tookland. Pippin's father, Paladin Took II, wielding authority as the rightful Thane of the Shirelands, closed off Tookland to the ruffians, running them off by shooting at them. However, Paladin II did not call a Shire moot or Shire muster. He simply fortified Tookland and waited. When Frodo and his companions returned from the coronation of King Ellisar, they found their homeland under an evil occupation of nearly 300 ruffians and half-orcs. The 4 hobbits set immediately to rousing the Shire to combat the enemy. Sam went to Cotton's farm, finding him and his sons with axes in their hands ready to fight. Meanwhile, Merry used the Horn of the Mark to perform a Horn Cry of Buckland, rousing 200 Bucklanders who set up a defensive pocket along the heavily banked part of Bywater Road. Pippin set off for Tookland to get his father, the Thane, to call for a Shire muster, rousing 100 Tooks. When Sam returned to the village of Bywater, he found that the Thane had mustered the Hobbitry in Arms. All the hobbits there had taken up axes, heavy hammers, stout staves, long knives and hunting bows. A squad of ruffians came upon them, only to have their leader shot dead with 4 arrows. The next day, 100 ruffians marched along Bywater Road and straight into an ambush. Merry and Pippin hid their forces in 2 hedges surrounding the road, which had been blocked by wagons, halting the unsuspecting ruffians. Upon being told to lay down their arms, the ruffians attacked, killing 2 hobbits, as 6 of them were shot dead with arrows. The rest began scattering and charging up the hedges, only to be rained upon by hobbit arrows and hewn by axes. After the Battle of Bywater, 19 hobbits were killed, 30 were wounded, and 70 dead ruffians littered the fields, the rest taken prisoner. As the hobbits confronted Sharkey, who turned out to be Saruman all along, they exiled him from the Shire. However, Wormtongue turned on his master, stabbing him in the back before being shot thrice by hobbit arrows and falling dead. It seems evident that the Shire hobbits, with their bow prowess and culture deeply influenced by the English countryside, were employing military tactics similar to those of English archers. We do not know what a hobbit bow looked like. Perhaps it was similar to a longbow, mayhaps it was of composite make. What we do know is that it was made of simple wood and made quick work of those like Wormtongue, who fell dead rather than succumbing to fatal wounds, meaning they were mighty bows indeed. Historically, the English usage of a militia was that of an authorized army raised by various counties. Men were chosen to serve in the militia by ballot, drawn from a draft system, but had officers appointed by their county lord lieutenants. One could reason Tolkien's Shire muster was something of a less formal British militia force and defensive in nature. Perhaps each folkland was responsible for raising a company of hobbits to attend the Shire muster. Whatever the case, as comical as it may sound, the Shire is a wonderful place to visit for those with good intentions. But let it be known, any intruders with nefarious ideas or fell beasts might find themselves face to face with the hobbitry in arms. More videos on the societies of Middle-earth are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord and much more. This is the Wizard and Warriors channel and we will catch you on the next one.